One of our goals on None of the Above is to get you active, to get you voting, to help you find a cause. And the home run of all of these things is maybe to get you to dip your toe in the water and run for office. It's the highest purpose that I can think of. And we're trying to encourage people to do that through a series of interviews with people that have put their toe in the water, or their ankles, or their knees, or all the way up to their necks for that matter. And we want you to hear what they've learned and take what they've learned and use it to make your decision and become part of the process. So today we're talking to John Denny. John, how are you?
Good. Good, Steve. How are you?
Great. Thank you for helping us today.
No problem.
So you did put your toe in the water and your knees and your ankle and probably got up to your neck last year. What caused you to decide to run for office in the first place? What was the impetus?
Well, you know, I feel that any time that you feel you can do a better job than your representative, it's your civic duty. You got to throw your hat in the ring, and I firmly believe that. I also believe strongly in independent candidates or third-party candidates, and, you know, it helps keep the other two parties honest. There's a lot of talk about reaching across the aisle, but as a third party or an independent, you can just kind of short arm it across the aisle right here from in the center. And, you know, I believe that we need a much more collegial atmosphere in Congress so that we can focus on solutions, results, get things done. But most importantly, why I decided to run, I would say, is because I had a great idea and, you know, legitimate people to back me with it, that being the contract that I focused on during my campaign.
Well, that's important because a lot of people decide they can do a better job. In fact, pretty much everybody thinks they can do a better job than their representative, but they don't take that next step. They don't have that idea, and they don't do that civic duty. So congratulations to you on that. How did you happen to choose the office you sought?
Well, it was a particularly interesting office to me. Currently, at the time, Michelle Bachmann was my representative. She was a former GOP hopeful, who many of your audience members may remember. I'd lived in the Minnesota's 6th district my whole life, and she had been my representative for as long as I'd been engaging in politics, and I never felt represented by her. That was one reason. Another was just the fact that historically Congress has been a much more effective body. I kind of alluded to that in the last question. And I'm not just talking about the polarization, which to me is just plain childish, but also, most importantly, the money involved in campaigning. That's really turned the whole process into a corrupt system, in my opinion. So I simply believed at the time that nothing else was really worth running for. Washington, D.C. is where the problems are. Minnesota's legislature, they have issues, but nothing like we saw in Congress at the time. I think it was an 8% approval rating at that moment. So, you know, that was worth attacking for me. And in order to go for that, you got to go right at the heart of the political dysfunction. Lastly, I guess it was just a practical reason. I could have been running for mayor of my small town or state legislature, but I had just moved. So I didn't have the local base that was necessary to try to run that kind of campaign. I wouldn't have had a lot of standing. So there was some pragmatism involved there as well.
Now, a lot of people see the challenge of running for Congress the same way you saw it, but they also find it daunting because of the financial challenges. How did that play out in your decision making?
Well, the financial challenges we met head on. I alluded to earlier a contract. That contract that I was running around during my campaign was drafted by George W. Bush's former chief ethics counsel in conjunction with my campaign manager, who is an attorney, or was an attorney at the time, or still is. And the point being, this contract was legally obligating me to abide by more stringent anti-corruption laws, which included the funding that I was taking in. I wasn't going to allow myself to take money outside of individuals within my state. So when I ran my campaign, I ran it on a very small budget, minuscule. I think we ended up spending $4,500 or thereabouts. Now, that's a very small amount of money, but we also were very well covered by the media. And it isn't, one doesn't necessarily exclude the other. Just because you can't raise money doesn't mean you can't get into this game. And to be clear, I was offered a lot of money from a lot of places, and I turned it down on principle. And I would just encourage you to not let money be a determining factor, because you can overcome that with enough hard work and persistence.
So you now decided to run for office. You picked your office. and now you had to make a decision of what label to run under. You could have gone with the party label or an independent label. I'm sure you could have run as a Republican or Democrat at that matter. So what made you decide to go the third party route?
Well, I've always leaned independent and third party as far as voting. But more importantly, here in Minnesota, and this is maybe not so well known, the Independence Party of Minnesota, which is a party, it held at that time major party status. This was a great vehicle for me, and it was one of the big deciding factors in my run, because I knew that if I run with the Independence Party, I would have the exact same legal distinction as the Republican and Democratic parties. That happened here in Minnesota when Dean Barkley, who was a former senator that was appointed to take Paul Wellstone's seat after the tragic plane incident, he was the founder of this party. He eclipsed a certain percentage, which gave us major party status. And with that, what's important about that is you're getting automatic ballot access. I didn't collect signatures to get on the ballot. I was automatically on the ballot. This would be different if you were a Libertarian Party candidate in this state where they hold minor party status. You wouldn't get that automatic ballot access, and that's really important. But most importantly is debate access. It gives you a lot of good reason to be able to push yourself into debates. I'm not going to tell you that it allowed me in automatically, because I had to earn every bit. I had to send lots of emails and show myself to be professional, but it allowed me into debates, and that is where independents do our damage. You can make the other two parties very uncomfortable when you're an independent and you're in a debate. They don't like it. They hit their partisan talking points while you focus on solutions, results. That really makes them uncomfortable. Also, just bringing up the fact that they are bought, in no matter how you look at it, just by virtue of running for one of the two major parties. And when you continually run that out, that puts them on the spot.
So, John, I think you've already answered our last question about 6 different times, but I'll have you answer it again. You had a great campaign. You had a great experience. What are the lessons and some of your takeaways that you want other candidates to think about as they get into this game?
Well, I would say my first piece of advice is just jump. Go ahead and just jump. I was a 28-year-old guy. I was a first-year law school student, but I'd never had any debate training. I never had, not even in high school. I was just a guy who got in because I believed as a citizen I was more representative of my district than the politicians, the polished politicians that are in there right now. So just jump, all too often as an independent and third-party voter, I don't even have a box to check when I go to the voting booth. There is no independent, there is no third-party candidate on that ballot, and it pains me to have to check one of those R's or those D's. So get in there, get yourself on the ballot. Second piece of advice I would give you is you're going to have to get yourself at least one very good worker. I had a fantastic campaign manager. He was instrumental in my success in my campaign and the great amount of media interviews that I was able to get into. Dr. Lawrence Lessig, who is a Harvard law professor and founder of the Mayday PAC. We got in contact with him. That was a lot through the work of my campaign manager. So you're going to need to find at least one good guy. And third, or maybe last, I would just say to stay persistent. It's not going to be easy for you as an independent candidate. The laws on the ballot, on ballot access, they're not written to give you access. They're written to keep you out. So you're going to have to collect signatures more than likely if you're in a state without a major third party. And that's okay. It helps you to get out into the community and get a face-to-face initially. So it isn't all bad to have to ballot yourself on, but you won't be invited to the debates necessarily automatically, so you're going to have to stay persistent. Like I said, you're just going to have to continuously email and call and get a hold of these people and push yourself in there. Show yourself to be legitimate, speak intelligently, focus on issues, and, these people who run these debates usually want someone like that in if they're an independent. You just need to give them a reason to put you in. So don't get downhearted. Stay persistent. I'm not going to lie to you. It's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding and very much worth it in the long run.
John, thank you for your time. You're a great ambassador for the cause, and we appreciate your help.
Steve, thank you so much for having me. I hope to see you again soon.